There's a reason people fall silent when a Scorpio enters the room. It's not about the clothes they wear, the way they walk, or even the way they speak. No, it's something far deeper, something that brushes the edges of your soul when their eyes land on you. It feels like a question you didn't prepare for, a truth you weren't ready to confront, a mirror you didn't want to look into, and you can't quite explain why. Have you ever felt like someone was watching you not with their eyes but with their intuition? As if your thoughts weren't safe inside your head anymore, as if someone could sense the conflict inside you before you even voiced it. That's the unnerving power of Scorpio. Some call it psychic. Others call it intuition on steroids, but those of us who've truly studied Scorpio energy, not just from books but from experience, know it's something more. It's not about magic tricks, it's not about manipulation, it's about resonance, depth, energy, and a terrifying ability to feel what you hide behind your smile. Scorpio doesn't try to read minds, they just do. Why? Because they were never trained to trust words. They've watched people lie with beautiful lips and betray with perfect timing. So they evolved, silently, spiritually, internally. They stopped listening to what you say and started listening to what you don't say. And that's what today's video is all about. Not the surface level traits, not the zodiac fluff, but the 9 deep, raw, and unnerving truths behind how Scorpios can read your mind and why it shakes people to their core. We're going to go far beyond horoscope memes. We'll dive into case studies, real-life stories, and the spiritual psychology of Scorpio's inner world. You'll understand how they use silence as a weapon, how they see patterns in energy like a surgeon sees veins, and why in the end, no matter how well you hide, a Scorpio always knows. But be warned. This won't be comfortable, it's not meant to be, because when you stare into the eyes of a Scorpio, you're not just being seen, you're being remembered. So take a deep breath, let go of the lies you tell yourself, and step into the spiritual lab where truth has no hiding place. Let's begin. Truth. 1. They sense the lie before you speak it. Long before your words take shape, a Scorpio has already picked up the lie. Not because they're suspicious by nature, though some might say they are, but because they feel energy the way most people hear sound or see color. It's instinctive, immediate, unfiltered. While others wait for evidence, Scorpio already has the verdict. Imagine walking into a room and trying to keep a secret. You wear the smile, you say all the right things, you even control your tone, your body language, your eye contact. But there's that one person in the room, the Scorpio, who keeps looking at you like they're reading invisible subtitles below everything you say. Because they are. You see, Scorpio doesn't listen with their ears. They listen with their presence. They pick up on what's missing from the sentence. The hesitation before a yes. The flicker in your eye when you say, "I'm fine." They notice how your energy dims when a certain name is mentioned, how your breathing changes when the topic shifts. They know when you're lying, not because of what you say, but because of what you aren't saying. This isn't about being psychic in a Hollywood sense. It's deeper. It's about being attuned to the subtle frequencies most people ignore. Scorpios are masters of psychological micro-signals. They've studied people out of necessity, not curiosity. They learned early in life that betrayal doesn't always come with thunder and lightning. Sometimes it shows up as a whisper, a delay in response, a fake laugh, a change in temperature. And because of this, they adapted. They trained themselves to detect dishonesty the way a wolf smells fear. They don't need a confession, they already know, and they won't always confront you. That's the unnerving part. Scorpio doesn't expose your lie, they let you live in it. They'll watch how far you're willing to go to protect it, how long you'll pretend, how deep your web gets, until you hang yourself in it. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Sometimes they'll test you just to see if you'll lie. They'll ask questions they already know the answers to. They'll observe how much of your story is about truth and how much is about control. This silent test isn't cruel, it's survival. Because to Scorpio, trust isn't given. It's earned through consistency, through alignment between word and energy. And once you fail that energetic test, they never see you the same again. One Scorpio woman once shared this chilling truth with me. I don't get angry when people lie. I just detach. Because once I feel the lie, the connection is already dead in my spirit. I just haven't buried it yet. Let that sink in. Most people argue, cry, beg for answers. But Scorpio, they feel the disconnect and begin preparing the emotional funeral. And by the time you realize they knew, they're already gone. That's the terror of lying to a Scorpio. Not that they'll explode, but that they won't. They'll just never trust you again. And you'll feel the cold in places you didn't know could freeze. Life lesson. If you have a Scorpio in your life, know this. Your words matter far less than your energy. Don't speak honesty. Be it. Because once they sense the disconnect, you won't get a second chance. Truth too. They hear what you don't say. Silence isn't silence to a Scorpio. To them, it's a language and they are fluent in it. While most people are focused on what's being said, Scorpio is tuned into what's being held back. The pauses, the hesitation, the shift in your gaze when a question catches you off guard, the slight tightening of your jaw when a topic touches a nerve. These aren't meaningless details to them, they are revelations. Because Scorpio doesn't rely on surface communication. They navigate in the deep. They hear what your soul whispers when your mouth goes quiet. They don't just interpret words, they interpret absence. And absence screams to them. Imagine having a conversation with a Scorpio about something you're trying to avoid. Maybe a situation that makes you feel vulnerable, guilty, or exposed. You smile, you redirect, you downplay. Most people would move on, but a Scorpio, they sit with the silence. They let it speak. And more often than not, they'll respond not to what you said, but to what you didn't. That's where people get unnerved. Because it's one thing to be heard, it's another thing to be understood without explanation. And that's what Scorpio does. They'll say, you don't have to explain, I already know. Or they'll ask the one question you weren't prepared for. They don't do it to shame you, they do it to connect. But if you're hiding something, especially from yourself, that connection can feel threatening, not because they're dangerous, but because truth is. Some people run from Scorpios for this very reason. Not because Scorpio said anything wrong, but because they heard what wasn't said. And deep down, that terrifies those who aren't ready to face their own shadows. A man once told me that his Scorpio sister called him at 3 a.m. out of nowhere and said, "Who hurt you today?" He hadn't posted anything. He hadn't spoken to anyone. But she felt it. Not only was he shocked, he burst into tears. Because she was the only person who ever heard what his pain refused to say. This is not rare with Scorpios. It's their nature, their gift, and sometimes their curse. Because hearing what others don't say also means carrying emotional weight they were never asked to carry. It's why Scorpio often isolates, why they appear withdrawn. Because when the world is full of noise, Scorpio is busy decoding silence, and that takes more energy than most people will ever understand. They don't want to fix you. They want to know you, the real you, even if you don't have the words for it yet. So if a Scorpio ever says something's off with you today, don't brush it off. Don't say, "No, I'm fine," because they already know you're not. They don't need your words to feel your pain. They just need your honesty. Life lesson. With Scorpio, silence isn't a place to hide. It's a mirror. And if you're brave enough to sit in that silence with them, you might just hear the truth your own soul has been dying to tell you. Scorpio doesn't just hear your voice, they hear your essence. Truth 3. They watch without watching. With Scorpio, you're always being observed even when you think you're alone. Not in a physical sense, not like surveillance, but energetically, emotionally, spiritually. Scorpio is the kind of presence that sits quietly in the corner while everyone else talks over each other, and yet somehow knows exactly who in the room is pretending, who is deflecting, who is broken, and who is hiding behind their charm. They see through the performance. And the most unnerving part, they never have to stare. They watch without watching. Most people rely on eye contact, verbal cues, or direct interaction to understand someone. Scorpio doesn't. They observe with the full body, with their entire energetic field. Their attention is sharp but subtle, like a pressure in the air that doesn't announce itself, but weighs on you just the same. When you talk to a Scorpio, it might seem like they're only half listening. Maybe they're quiet, maybe they're still. But don't let that fool you. They're tracking your emotional temperature. They're analyzing the patterns in your tone. They're storing what you said and what you didn't say for later. And they never forget the shift. One Scorpio woman I knew had a friend who went quiet every time a certain name came up in conversation. The friend would sip water, change the subject, or smile just a bit too hard. Most people thought nothing of it, but the Scorpio noticed. She said nothing for months. Then one day, after everyone else left the room, she turned and said, "Why do you flinch when I mention him?" The girl froze, because the Scorpio had seen what even her own family hadn't noticed, and she had never been directly asked that question. But in that moment, the entire secret unraveled. This is how Scorpio mind reading works. Not through force, through presence. They let patterns repeat. They let behaviors play out. They wait, because the truth always reveals itself to the one patient enough to observe. And Scorpio is patient, dangerously so. They don't need to interrupt you to see who you are. They let you talk yourself in circles until your real self slips out. And when it does, they capture it like a photograph in their mind, filed, remembered, never forgotten. That's what makes Scorpio dangerous to people with secrets. They don't just catch the lie, they catch the reason behind the lie, and they remember every detail of the moment it slipped. It's not uncommon for Scorpio to bring up something you said 6 months ago, word for word, not to throw it at you, but to quietly connect it to what you're saying now. And that's when you realize they've been watching all along. You just didn't notice, because they didn't need to be seen to see you. Life lesson. If you think you've hidden something from a Scorpio, think again. They're not watching for drama. They're watching for truth. And if you're brave enough to let your mask fall in their presence, you might finally be seen for who you are, not who you pretend to be. Because Scorpio doesn't just observe. They witness. Truth, 4. They mirror your shadow back to you. You may think you're hiding it well, the guilt, the fear, the envy, the insecurity. You smile, you stay composed, you play your role. But then you lock eyes with a Scorpio, and suddenly it feels like your own shadow is staring back at you. Because Scorpio doesn't just see your light, they see your contradictions. Your contradictions don't confuse them, they expose them. Without saying a word, they can reflect the part of yourself you've buried so deep, even you've stopped noticing it. This is why so many people feel uncomfortable around Scorpio, not because they're unkind, but because they mirror what you haven't healed, and they do it without trying. It's not manipulation, it's resonance. Their energy is like a dark mirror. It doesn't show you who you pretend to be, it shows you the truth of who you are. And that kind of reflection, that kind of clarity, it burns. A man once told me that his Scorpio coworker made him feel exposed even though they barely interacted. I didn't even talk to her that much, he said. But when she looked at me, it was like she already knew I wasn't who I claimed to be. That's the Scorpio effect. They don't need to accuse you. They don't need to attack you. They just exist, and that's enough to make the truth inside you crawl to the surface. And the strangest thing is, this mirror can also be healing, if you're ready. Because Scorpio doesn't reflect to shame. They reflect to awaken. They aren't here to punish your shadow, they're here to make sure you stop hiding from it. But if you're not ready to face it, their presence will feel invasive. You'll say, "I don't like their energy," but what you really mean is, "They saw something in me I wasn't ready to see." This is why Scorpio relationships are often the most intense. Whether romantic, platonic, or professional, being close to a Scorpio will bring your truth to the surface. Not because they push it, but because their depth makes it impossible to stay shallow. They'll notice when your words don't match your energy. They'll feel the resistance when your heart is closed. And if they love you, they'll sit with you in that discomfort, quietly holding up the mirror until you choose to look. It's unnerving, it's uncomfortable, and it's sacred. Because not everyone has the courage to mirror your shadow without judgment. But Scorpio does. Life lesson. If a Scorpio makes you uncomfortable, ask yourself, is it really them? Or is it what they're reflecting back to me? The discomfort isn't the enemy, it's the doorway. Because Scorpio doesn't come to destroy you. They come to help you destroy your illusions. And that, my friend, is the first step toward liberation. Truth 5. They remember what you forgot you revealed. Most people forget what they say in moments of vulnerability, but Scorpio never forgets. That casual comment you made months ago when your guard was down, that offhand remark you laughed off as a joke, that moment your voice cracked and you quickly changed the subject. They caught it, they logged it, they kept it not out of malice, but because to them truth spoken in vulnerability carries more weight than 1,000 polished sentences. And that's where the unnerving part begins. Because when Scorpio recalls something you said long ago, something you don't even remember revealing, it hits like lightning. Not because they're throwing it in your face, but because it reminds you of a moment when you were seen perhaps more deeply than you intended. And Scorpio remembers these moments with eerie precision. One Scorpio woman once described it this way: "I don't remember everything people say, but I remember what matters, the sentence that cracked their mask." They're not interested in gossip. They're not collecting receipts to use against you later. They're collecting patterns, energy shifts, micro-confessions. To Scorpio, it's like piecing together a spiritual jigsaw puzzle, and by the time most people are still trying to figure out who they are, Scorpio has already built the picture. That's why they often seem ahead of everyone else emotionally. They study you in silence, and when the time comes, they'll reference something that stuns you with its accuracy. You said you were over them, but back in October when we talked about that song, you flinched. I knew then you weren't. You'll feel exposed, not because they dug into your secrets, but because you gave them the key without realizing it. Scorpio stores emotional data the way a hawk maps the wind, not obsessively, instinctively. And when you lie about your past, pretend about your present, or cover your emotions with performance, they recall the contradiction. They remember when your energy didn't match your words, and they connect the dots without needing your permission. But here's the twist. They don't always use this information. Scorpio isn't driven by ego, they're driven by alignment. If you're honest, raw, real, they'll hold your secrets like sacred ground. But if you lie, they'll recall everything you once told them in truth and realize just how far you've drifted from it. And that's when trust quietly dies. Life lesson: when you speak to a Scorpio, speak with presence. Because even if you forget what you said, they won't. And one day, the truth you whispered may come back, not to haunt you, but to remind you of who you really are. Scorpio doesn't use your past to hurt you. They use it to see whether you've grown or simply hidden better. Truth. They test your truth in silence. Scorpio doesn't need to interrogate you. They test you without ever saying a word. It might feel like they're pulling away, but they're not. They're watching, listening, feeling, waiting to see if what you claimed is still true when no one is watching, when you think no one is keeping score. Because to Scorpio, truth isn't in the words, it's in the consistency. You said you've changed. They'll silently observe your patterns. You said you're not hiding anything. They'll notice how your energy shifts when a certain name enters the room. You said you're loyal. They'll feel the micro hesitations when you're forced to choose between them and someone else. And here's the most chilling part. They never tell you when the test begins. There's no warning, no announcement. Just a subtle shift, a step back, a deeper silence, a pause in the emotional rhythm. And while you carry on thinking all is well, Scorpio is analyzing, not with judgment, but with precision. One Scorpio man told me this. If someone says they're genuine, I don't need them to prove it. I just stay silent and let time do the work. People always reveal themselves. That's the Scorpio method. They don't pressure you, they don't control you. They simply remove the emotional spotlight and watch what lives in the dark. Because what you do when you're not being watched, that's who you really are. And Scorpio wants the truth, not the performance, not the mask. This silent testing unnerves people because it creates a strange pressure. You start wondering, did they notice that? Or why do I feel like I'm being evaluated? The answer is because you are, not with malice, but with intention. Scorpio knows that trust is a living thing. It breathes, it evolves, it either deepens or disintegrates. And once they test you and find the core of your truth missing, they don't always tell you. They just shift, detach, withdraw. No arguments, no blame, no drama, just distance. And if you ask them why, they may never say it outright, because Scorpio believes if you failed the test, you already know. Life lesson. Scorpio won't always tell you what they're testing, but that doesn't mean you're not being watched. Your truth must be lived, not performed, especially with them, because the scariest part of failing a Scorpio's test isn't the confrontation, it's the silence that follows. Truth. 7. They read energy, not just behavior. You can control your facial expressions. You can rehearse your lines. You can imitate kindness, affection, even vulnerability. But you can't fake your energy, and that's what Scorpio reads first. Long before you speak, before you move, before you decide how to present yourself, your energy already walks into the room, and Scorpio senses it like a shift in temperature. They don't need to see you, they feel you. This is where the Scorpio mind-reading myth becomes very real, because it's not about telepathy in the science fiction sense, it's about energetic perception. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the planet of the underworld, the subconscious, the unseen forces that drive human behavior. That makes them naturally drawn to what can't be explained, what's beneath the surface, what pulses behind the smile, what leaks through the cracks in your persona. They sense when something is off, even when everything looks perfectly fine. You might be smiling, but they feel the panic underneath. You might be calm, but they detect the storm just beneath your skin. You might be flirting, but they feel the emptiness behind your charm. And here's what sets them apart. They don't dismiss what they feel even when you deny it. They trust the tension in the air. They believe the emotional undercurrent, and they often act on that intuition even if they can't yet explain it logically. One Scorpio once said to me, "I'd rather be wrong trusting my gut than right ignoring it. Energy never lies, people do." That's why so many people feel exposed around Scorpios. Because while you're busy perfecting your story, they're scanning your frequency. And no matter how impressive your mask is, if your energy doesn't match, they know. They may not say anything. They might smile politely. But inside, they've already recalibrated their perception of you. You can't cheat their radar. In relationships, this creates an intense dynamic. Scorpio isn't satisfied with appearances. They need alignment. If your actions say yes, but your energy says no, they'll pull back, not out of offense, but out of instinct. Because Scorpio's emotional safety doesn't come from what you say, it comes from what they feel around you. They thrive in truth, not performance, in authenticity, not perfection. And if your energy tells them you're not safe, not real, not grounded in who you claim to be, they won't confront you. They'll simply exit mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You may never know why they stopped responding, But trust this, they felt what you were too afraid to say. Life lesson: words may win over the crowd, but they won't win over a Scorpio because they're not listening to your voice. They're listening to your frequency. And in their world, only one truth matters. Energy never lies. Truth 8. They know what you're about to say before you say it. There's a moment just before you speak when your thoughts are still forming, your intention is still gathering shape. Most people miss that moment, but Scorpio doesn't. They catch the breath before the confession, the flicker of emotion before the joke, the pause before the sentence you're not sure you should say. And sometimes they say it for you. That's the part that unnerves people the most. Not that Scorpios read between the lines, but that they speak the truth you were too afraid to say yourself. It's not coincidence. It's not magic. It's pattern recognition combined with deep intuitive sensitivity. Because when you've spent a lifetime watching people, when you've trained your emotional radar to catch the invisible currents, you begin to sense what's coming before it arrives. And Scorpio doesn't just sense what's coming, they prepare for it. In conversations, they often anticipate your next sentence, not because they're interrupting, but because they're following your emotional trajectory. They've already picked up on the guilt in your tone, the trembling behind your joke, the weight in your silence. So when you speak, it's not surprising, it's confirmation. And that's what makes people feel exposed, because they thought they were in control. They thought they could deliver their narrative on their terms. But Scorpio already knew. I once watched a Scorpio woman talk to a friend who was about to break down. The friend said, "I'm fine, really." But the Scorpio gently interrupted with, "You feel like a burden and you don't know how to ask for help, right?" The friend collapsed in tears because that was what she was about to say, but didn't know how. Scorpio didn't push. She simply spoke the truth, waiting behind the silence. And that's the true depth of their mind reading. It's not about power, it's about presence. They're so attuned, so locked in, so spiritually grounded in the moment that they bypass the surface entirely. They know what you're about to say because they've already listened to what your energy said and followed the line straight to its destination. But here's what separates Scorpio from manipulators. They don't use this gift to control, they use it to connect, unless you betray that connection. Because if you're dishonest and they still know the truth, they'll begin to question not just your words, but your intentions. And that's when the real wall goes up. Because Scorpio can forgive confusion, they can forgive uncertainty, but if you consistently try to mask the truth, they already know you're not just lying, you're insulting their knowing, and they don't tolerate that for long. Life lesson: with Scorpio, speak what's real, not just what's safe, because chances are they already know, and when someone sees your soul clearly, the greatest respect you can offer is honesty. They don't need you to be perfect, they just need you to be true. Truth 9. They see through you even when you think you're hiding. You can fool the world, your coworkers, your family, even your closest friends. But with a Scorpio, you're never truly hidden because they don't just look at you, they look through you. It's not because they're trying to expose you, it's because they're built to perceive what others miss. And the moment you think you've tucked something away neatly, they're already standing on the other side of the wall you built. You could be in the middle of a perfect performance, charming, composed, confident, and still feel like something inside you is being watched. That eerie sensation, that's not paranoia. That's a Scorpio feeling out the fracture lines in your mask. Scorpio's perception isn't just intuitive, it's ancestral. It's ancient. It carries the wisdom of soul memory, shadow work, and lifetimes of emotional decoding. They see how you walk when you're trying to hide your hurt. They see how you breathe when a certain name is mentioned. They see how your smile flickers even for a second when something hits too close to the bone. They don't call it out. They don't shame you. They witness you. And that witnessing alone is powerful enough to crack even the strongest defense. Because suddenly you realize you've been seen fully, completely, undeniably. not just for what you present, but for what you've tried to bury. And here's where the real shift happens. If you embrace that moment, if you stop hiding, Scorpio becomes your fiercest protector. They become the keeper of your secrets, the guardian of your soul's truth. But if you double down on the mask, if you gaslight, deflect, pretend, they won't fight you, they won't chase you, they'll release you. And once Scorpio walks away, not physically but energetically, you'll feel it like a vacuum, a spiritual silence, an absence that echoes in ways no words can fill. Because Scorpio's presence isn't casual, it's a sacred contract. And when you violate that truth, they don't seek revenge, they seek cleansing. And sometimes the cost is you. Life lesson: don't fear being seen by a Scorpio, fear refusing to be seen. Because they don't need you to be flawless, they just need you to stop hiding. And if you're willing to show up with truth, they will meet you in places no one else dares to go. Scorpio doesn't just read your mind, they read your soul. Conclusion: the sacred weight of being seen. So now you know, it's not a myth, it's not a coincidence, it's not paranoia. When you feel that chill down your spine in the presence of a Scorpio, when your words start to stumble, when your heart beats a little faster as they look at you in silence, you're not imagining it. You're being seen, but not in the way most people understand. You're being scanned, soul deep. Scorpio doesn't skim your surface, they dive into the current beneath, and they don't come back up until they've touched the truth. And let's be honest, most people aren't ready for that. We live in a world built on performance, social masks, pretty lies dressed as connection. But Scorpio cuts through the illusion, not with cruelty, but with clarity. Because at the heart of it all, their mind-reading gift isn't about control or manipulation, it's about resonance. They want to feel you, the real you, raw, honest, unmasked. They want to sit with your story, even the parts you haven't told yet. They want to witness your contradictions, not to shame them, but to understand them, because in their world, truth is sacred, and souls are not puzzles to be solved, they are mirrors to be honored. And if you're lucky enough to be loved by a Scorpio truly loved, then know this: you are being held by someone who sees everything and chooses to stay. They see your shadow and still walk beside you. They see your pain and don't flinch. They see your fears and guard them like ancient treasure. But if you lie, if you betray the truth, they already knew. You don't just lose their trust, you lose access to a realm of connection most people never even touch. That's the cost, that's the power, that's the Scorpio path. Final life lesson: we all want to be understood, but not everyone has the courage to be fully seen. Scorpio offers that chance, but only if you come to them real bare and without performance. Because their gift of perception is not a weapon, it's a doorway, a portal into the deepest kind of love, the kind that sees you and stays. So if there's a Scorpio in your life, don't be afraid of their mind, respect their soul. Because once they open the gates of their knowing, you'll never be the same again. Call to action. If this spoke to something inside you, if you felt what it's like to be known by a Scorpio, or are one yourself, share your story in the comments. What truth did a Scorpio reflect back to you? What have you seen in others that they didn't even realize they were showing? Let's bring this conversation into the light, even the shadows. And if you're ready for more truth, more depth, and more soul, subscribe now to the Path to Buddha Wisdom, because this journey is just beginning, and there is so much more beneath the surface.